Commander Jason Thornton tapped 3 of his 7 appendages against the scanning console, the sound reverberating through the bridge of the Galactic Confederation vessel, Inevitable Discovery. The name was beginning to feel more and more ironic with every passing moment. 3 weeks into their mission, they had found absolutely nothing of note, just space dust, a few mundane asteroid clusters, and the occasional derelict satellite. Tell me again, why did High Command assign our most advanced reconnaissance vessel to this backwater sector? Jason asked, not bothering to hide the frustration in his voice. His cranial ridges flushed a deep purple, a clear sign of irritation to anyone familiar with Ithrex physiology. Lieutenant Emily Carter glanced up from her navigation station, her 4 eyes blinking in sequence. Because, Commander, something tripped our long-range scanners last month. Energy signatures inconsistent with known species, she explained, her mandibles clicking softly. Plus, no one else wanted this assignment. Jason let out a bark of laughter that sounded like metal grinding against stone. Ah, the truth finally comes out. The glorious inevitable discovery, pride of the Confederation fleet, relegated to chasing sensor ghosts because Admiral David Moore owes me for that disaster on Reel 7. The bridge crew exchanged knowing glances. Everyone had heard about Reel 7, but no one dared discuss it openly, unless they enjoyed having their exoskeletons remain intact. "Sir!" Ensign Kyle Johnson called out from the tactical station, his gelatinous form rippling with excitement. "Picking up a faint signal at coordinates 227, Mark 43. Jason straightened, all 4 of his spine segments rigid. Display on the main viewer. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a nondescript patch of space. Nothing unusual until Kyle adjusted the filters. There, barely visible against the starry backdrop, floated what appeared to be an artificial structure. "Magnification," Jason ordered, leaning forward. The image zoomed in, revealing a vessel of unfamiliar design, long and angular, with what appeared to be weapons placements along its hull. Primitive by Confederation standards, but unmistakably a warship. "Unknown configuration," reported Science Officer Sarah Turner, her serpentine body coiling tighter with interest. "Doesn't match any species in our database." Jason's secondary mouth curled into a smile, a rare expression among his kind. "Ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary entities, I believe we've just discovered a new spacefaring civilization." "Congratulations all around," he added, his tone laced with mock enthusiasm. "Kyle, break out the ceremonial neurotoxin. We'll have mandatory celebrations after the shift." The bridge erupted in groans, but Jason waved them off. Now. Protocol demands we document this momentous occasion properly. "Officer Turner, prepare the deep scan array," he ordered, ignoring the crew's dismay. "Let's see what makes this primitive vessel tick." Sarah slithered to her station. "Sir, Confederation protocols suggest first contact procedures rather than invasive scanning." Jason waved 3 of his appendages dismissively. "First contact is for diplomats and their fancy dinner parties. We're explorers. We explore. Besides, look at that thing." He gestured toward the screen. "Barely holding together. Whoever built it probably hasn't figured out faster-than-light communication yet." Lieutenant Jessica Barnes cleared her throat, the sound akin to grinding pebbles. "Commander, perhaps caution." "Caution gets you passed over for promotion," Jason interrupted. "Lieutenant, adventure and discovery get your name in the historical archives." Mira hesitated but then spoke up. "Prepare full-spectrum scan. I want to know everything about this vessel before its builders even realize we're here." As the crew reluctantly complied, Jason settled back into his command chair, already mentally composing his report to High Command. This would show Admiral David Moore. This would show them all. Little did Commander Jason Thornton know that his name would indeed enter the historical archives, but not in the way he had hoped. The inevitable discovery glided closer to the mysterious vessel, maintaining a distance that Commander Jason Thornton deemed respectfully invasive, close enough to gather detailed information, far enough to make a quick escape if needed. Not that he anticipated any trouble from such a primitive craft. "What are we looking at, people?" he demanded, his primary eyes fixed on the main viewer, while his secondary set scanned the incoming data streams. Science Officer Sarah Turner's claws danced across her console. "Vessel is approximately 750 meters in length. The composition is primarily metal alloys, titanium, steel variants, and several compounds I'm having difficulty identifying." Her tongue flicked out in concentration. "Curious energy readings. They appear to be using some form of nuclear fission, combined with something else our sensors can't quite decipher. Weapons capabilities? Jason asked, feigning disinterest, though his cranial ridges pulsed with excitement. Ensign Kyle Johnson bubbled anxiously at the tactical station. Difficult to determine without a deeper scan, Commander. Surface analysis suggests multiple launch tubes, point defense systems, and what might be energy weapon placements. Fairly standard configuration for a mid-tier civilization. Mid-tier? Jason scoffed. Look at those exhaust ports. They're practically begging to be targeted. He snorted, pointing at several sections of the ship's hull. Those are cooling vents if I've ever seen them. One well-placed disruptor blast, and the whole thing goes boom. Lieutenant Jessica Barnes frowned, all four eyes narrowing simultaneously. Commander, I'm detecting unusual electromagnetic shielding around the vessel. Our initial scans are bouncing off certain sections. Bouncing off? Impossible, Jason scoffed. Our scanners can penetrate a neutron star. This bucket of bolts shouldn't pose any challenge. He waved a claw dismissively. Recalibrate and try again. We've already tried 3 recalibrations, sir, Jessica replied, mandibles clicking in frustration. Whatever they're using, it's specifically designed to scatter our scan patterns. Jason's appendages stopped their incessant tapping. That suggests prior knowledge of our scanning technology, he mused. Interesting. He paused, then ordered, Very well. Bring us closer and increase scan intensity by 30%. Sir, Sarah protested. Increasing scan intensity might alert them to our presence. The energy discharge could what? Wake them from their primitive hibernation pods? Jason laughed, a harsh sound that made the bridge crew wince. Please, they probably think our scan is just background radiation. Proceed with the enhanced scan, Officer Turner. That's an order. The inevitable discovery edged closer to the human warship, its advanced sensors probing with increased power. The mysterious vessel continued to drift, seemingly unaware or unconcerned by the alien presence. Scan initiated, Sarah announced, her serpentine body tensing with apprehension. Penetrating outer hull layers now. The bridge fell silent as data began streaming across their screens. Jason leaned forward, 7 appendages gripping his chair in anticipation. This can't be right, muttered Kyle after several moments, his gelatinous form rippling with confusion. What can't be right? Jason snapped. The internal configuration, sir, it's changing. Changing? Jason demanded. Ships don't change their internal layout. Ensign, fix your equipment. It's functioning perfectly, Commander, Kyle insisted, his voice rising in pitch. But look at this. I scanned this section 10 seconds ago and it showed crew quarters. Now it's registering as a weapons bay. Jason pushed himself out of his command chair and moved to Kyle's station, studying the display with all 4 of his eyes. Some kind of holographic masking technology, he mused. Clever, but futile against our systems. Increase scan power by another 20%, he ordered. Commander, Jessica interjected. I'm detecting power surges from the vessel, Lieutenant Emily Carter reported, her voice strained. They seem to be reacting to our scan. Let them react, Commander Jason Thornton replied, settling back into his chair with a touch of disdain. Maybe they'll hail us and we can get this whole first contact nonsense over with. He looked around the bridge, his appendages drumming impatiently. Continue the scan. I want to know everything about this ship before its crew finishes their morning stimulant beverages. The enhanced scan burrowed deeper into the human warship, transmitting streams of data back to the inevitable discovery. As the moments passed, the alien crew's confusion became more apparent. Sir, I'm getting conflicting readings, Sarah reported, her usually calm voice showing a crack of unease. The propulsion system appears to be both more advanced and more archaic than expected, especially for a vessel of this size. And the weapons systems, she paused, they're configured in a way that doesn't make tactical sense. Unless, Kyle trailed off, his gelatinous form rippling in uncertainty. Unless what? Jason asked, his voice tinged with annoyance. Unless they're expecting us to scan them, Kyle said, his voice shrinking slightly in apprehension. Jason was about to brush this off when a new alert sounded from the navigation station. Commander, Emily said, her voice tense. The vessel's powering up, and it's turning toward us. The bridge erupted into chaotic activity as alarms blared from every corner of the room. The previously dormant human warship was now unmistakably active, its dark hull suddenly illuminated by numerous bright sections. Impossible, Jason sputtered, cranial ridges flashing from purple to crimson. Their sensors couldn't possibly be sophisticated enough to detect our presence, let alone our scan. Sarah Turner's serpentine body snapped upright, her usual calm replaced by alarm. "Commander, they're not just detecting us. They're countering our scan with a reverse probe. Our database is being accessed." Her voice rose in disbelief. "Shut it down! Lock them out! Now!" Jason bellowed, slamming 3 appendages onto his armrest. "No primitive species gets to rummage through our systems." Lieutenant Emily Carter's 4 eyes widened simultaneously. "Sir, I'm detecting multiple targeting systems activating on the human vessel. They seem to be—" "Oh no," she muttered, mandibles clicking nervously. "Speak clearly, Lieutenant," Jason demanded, growing impatient. "They're targeting the exact point where our scan is originating from," Emily explained rapidly. "It's like they're tracing our scan back to its source." "Commander, energy spike from the human vessel," Ensign Kyle Johnson bubbled anxiously. "There!" A brilliant beam of concentrated energy shot out from the human warship, striking the inevitable Discovery with pinpoint precision. The alien vessel trembled as the beam connected with their primary scanner array. "Damage report!" Jason roared as the bridge lights flickered wildly. "Scanner array compromised," Kyle reported, his voice shaky. "They didn't target our weapons or engines, they specifically disabled our scanning systems." Jason's appendages twitched in fury. "That's disturbingly tactical." "Sir," Sarah interjected, "our secondary systems are picking up a transmission from the human vessel. It seems to be an identification request." "Put it through," Jason ordered, straightening up with renewed focus. The main viewer flickered, showing a series of symbols that the ship's computer quickly translated. "UNC Veracruz, to unidentified vessel. Cease aggressive scanning operations or face additional defensive measures." "They call that defensive?" Jason growled. "They just fired on a Confederation vessel." "Technically, sir," Emily replied cautiously, "they only disabled our ability to scan them. Our weapons, engines, and life support are still intact." Jason shot her a sharp look, his 4 eyes narrowing. "Thank you for the tactical analysis, Lieutenant. Perhaps you'd like to take over the mission." "No, sir," Emily answered quickly, her mandibles snapping shut. "Send them a message," Jason commanded, his voice darkening. "Tell this UNC Veracruz that we are a peaceful exploration vessel of the Galactic Confederation, and their unprovoked attack constitutes an act of war." "Sir, considering they deliberately avoided serious damage when they clearly could have, perhaps a less aggressive response would be wiser," Emily suggested, hesitating. "Send the message," Jason bit out, his words sharp with barely contained anger. Sarah reluctantly began composing the message. "Commander, I'm detecting more energy buildups," Kyle reported, his voice filled with urgency. "They seem to be charging several weapon systems at once." "Evasive maneuvers," Jason commanded, his earlier confidence beginning to falter. "Activate defensive shields." "Too late," Kyle announced, his gelatinous form pale with fear. There! The inevitable Discovery was rocked violently as a series of precisely aimed energy pulses slammed into its hull. Sparks flew from the bridge consoles, and systems flickered to life and then died. "Status," Jason demanded, picking himself up from the floor, still reeling from the impact. "Secondary scanners are down. Communication dish is compromised. They've effectively rendered us blind and mute," Emily reported gravely. "They're sending another message," she added. The screen flickered again, showing the new text. "Final warning. Withdraw immediately, or we will respond with appropriate force." Commander Jason Thornton stared at the message, his cranial ridges turning a sickly yellow. These humans weren't primitive at all. They were dangerous, and he had just made them an enemy. "We are not retreating from these hairless primates," Commander Jason Thornton declared, mandibles stretched wide in defiance. His earlier fear had been replaced with a bruised pride, a far more dangerous emotion among the Vorath. "Prepare countermeasures," he ordered. "If they want to witness the might of the Confederation, we'll be happy to oblige." The bridge crew exchanged anxious glances, but no one dared to voice the obvious. This was a fight they were unlikely to win. They were outmatched, outmaneuvered, and very possibly dealing with a species far more advanced than they had initially assumed. "Tactical analysis," Jason demanded, turning to Kyle. "Sir, with our scanning capabilities compromised, we're limited to passive observation," Kyle answered, his gelatinous form pulsing anxiously. "However," he continued, "their weapon systems seem to rely heavily on directed energy and kinetic projectiles. Our shield should hold against a limited amount of exposure." "Good enough," Jason muttered, his mind working quickly. What can we salvage from our scan data before they shut us down completely? Science Officer Sarah Turner flicked out her tongue nervously. Fragmentary at best, Commander. We've confirmed roughly 500 life forms aboard. The internal temperature suggests an oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere. Power distribution indicates several redundant systems, and there's something off about their computer network. Off how? Jason pressed. Segmented, compartmentalized, as though designed to resist intrusion, Sarah said, her serpentine body coiling tighter in concentration. Sir, I believe they've encountered hostile forces before. Their defenses aren't just good, they're specialized, she concluded. Jason absorbed this new information, his 7 appendages tapping in various rhythms against his chair. So they've encountered others like us. Interesting. Let's see how they handle a more direct approach. Prepare the infiltration drones. Lieutenant Emily Carter's 4 eyes widened in alarm. Commander, using infiltration drones is a serious escalation. Confederation protocols clearly prohibit. Confederation protocols didn't foresee a primitive species outsmarting our sensors, Lieutenant, Jason interrupted. Launch the drones. Tactical pattern Sigma 3. Reluctantly, Emily entered the launch commands. Moments later, 12 sleek metallic spheres deployed from the underside of the inevitable Discovery, propelling themselves toward the human warship. Drones are active and approaching target, Kyle reported, his gelatinous form now a nervous shade of yellow-green. They probably can't detect them, Jason said with confidence. Our infiltration drones are designed to penetrate even Zorian phase shields. This human metal box shouldn't be a challenge. The crew watched in tense silence as the drones closed in on the UNC Vera Cruz. The spheres reached the hull and began phasing through the outer armor, their advanced technology enabling them to temporarily adjust their molecular density. Breach successful, Kyle announced. Drones are transmitting. The main viewer now displayed a dozen different feeds as the infiltration drones sent back visual data. Corridors, maintenance tunnels, storage areas, all eerily empty. Where is everyone? Jason muttered, leaning forward. 500 life forms and not a single one in sight. Commander, Sarah interjected, her voice tight with urgency. I'm analyzing the internal atmosphere from the drone telemetry. Elevated carbon dioxide levels indicate recent heavy occupancy in these areas. They've moved to battle stations, Emily suggested, her mandibles clicking nervously. They must know we've breached their hull. Jason dismissed her concern with a wave. Redirect the drones to their command center and engine room. Let's see what we're really dealing with here. The drones moved deeper into the human vessel, transmitting more and more baffling data. They passed labs filled with strange equipment, racks of weapons that no one on the crew could recognize, and what looked like physical training areas, indicating that the humans were preparing for hand-to-hand combat. What kind of spacefaring species still trains for physical confrontation? Jason muttered under his breath, genuinely puzzled. Primitive. Commander, Kyle suddenly called out. Drone 7 has reached what appears to be a tactical center. The main viewer shifted to the feed from Drone 7. The room it had infiltrated was brimming with holographic displays of the inevitable Discovery from multiple angles, with detailed annotations marking its vulnerabilities. Human personnel were working quickly and precisely, yet none of them seemed aware of the drone's presence. They've been analyzing us while we've been analyzing them, Sarah observed, her voice hollow with realization. And they're clearly better at it. Jason's gaze remained fixed on the display, his cranial ridges draining to a sickly yellow. What are those diagrams on the far wall? The drone zoomed in on a series of schematics, drawings of not just Confederation exploration craft like the inevitable Discovery, but warships, science vessels, and even diplomatic shuttles. Each was paired with detailed technical data on weapons, capabilities, and shield frequencies. That's impossible, Jason whispered, his voice barely audible. They couldn't possibly have this information. We've never encountered their species before. Drone 3 has reached their armory, Commander, Kyle reported, his voice trembling. You need to see this. The view changed again, this time showing a massive chamber filled with an arsenal of weapons. Among them were unmistakable Confederation plasma rifles, Zorian phase blades, and even what appeared to be a Zentaur neural disruptor. They've been collecting our technology, Emily said, her voice filled with shock. Not just our technology, these weapons belong to multiple spacefaring species. Kyle's voice rose in panic. The drones are being detected. They've got some kind of counter-surveillance system. One by one, the drone feeds went dark, each cutting out as a brief image of humans in combat armor appeared, moving toward the drones with weapons drawn. Get those drones out of there now, Jason barked. Too late, Sarah replied grimly. All drones have been neutralized. The bridge was silent as the weight of the situation sank in. These humans had not only defended against their scan, but they had anticipated every move the Confederation might make and prepared for it. Commander, Emily said, breaking the silence, her voice eerily calm. The human vessel is hailing us. Jason sank back into his command chair, all 7 appendages limp with dread. Put it through. The main viewer flickered to life, revealing a human female. Her dark skin contrasted sharply with her crisp white uniform, adorned with insignia that Jason couldn't identify. Her expression was neutral, but her eyes, sharp and calculating, sent an involuntary shiver through his exoskeleton. This is Captain Sophia Martin of the United Nations Space Command vessel Vera Cruz, she said, her voice steady and unwavering. Your infiltration of our ship constitutes an act of war under UNC Protocol 7529. However, as this appears to be our first official contact, I am authorized to offer you one final opportunity to withdraw. Jason swallowed hard, his cranial ridges fluctuating between a sickly yellow and defiant purple. I am Commander Jason Thornton of the Galactic Confederation. Your destruction of our scanning equipment and infiltration drones was unprovoked. Captain Sophia Martin raised an eyebrow. And unprovoked, Commander Thornton. Your deep scan attempted to access classified military systems. Your drones attempted to infiltrate secure areas of my vessel. Both actions are hostile, according to any reasonable interpretation of interspecies law. Interspecies law? Sarah whispered from her station. They have established protocols for this, Jason murmured, his mind racing. Captain Sophia Martin continued, as though hearing Sarah's comment. We've encountered 177 spacefaring civilizations prior to yours. 12 are now our allies. 5 made the same mistake you're currently making. She let the words hang in the air, heavy with implication. They are no longer spacefaring. The bridge erupted into murmurs of disbelief. Kyle's gelatinous form had turned almost transparent with fear. Lieutenant Emily Carter clicked her mandibles rapidly, her eyes wide with shock. Even Sarah's usually composed serpentine form was coiled tightly as though it was in pain. 17 species? Jason managed to rasp, his voice barely audible. That's impossible. The Confederation has only cataloged 8 other spacefaring civilizations in this entire sector. Perhaps your Confederation hasn't been looking in the right places, Captain Sophia Martin replied, a slight smile playing on her lips, though it never reached her eyes. Or maybe those civilizations chose not to reveal themselves to you. Not everyone announces their presence to the galaxy at large. Jason's mind raced. The implications were overwhelming. If these humans had encountered 17 other spacefaring species, established formal protocols for interaction, and gathered technology from across the galaxy, they were no newcomers to space travel. In fact, they were veterans, perhaps even older than the Confederation itself. Your ship designation? Sarah spoke up suddenly, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding her fear. Vera Cruz. What does it signify? Captain Sophia Martin turned her gaze toward Sarah. It refers to an ancient Earth battle where a numerically superior force underestimated their opponent and suffered a devastating defeat. History tends to repeat itself, doesn't it? The message couldn't have been clearer. Jason felt his insides tighten with dread. Chief Monroe Reyes, she called to someone off screen. Please share the relevant data from our scans with our visitors. Perhaps a more complete picture will help them make a more informed decision. Before Jason could protest, the remaining functional screens on the inevitable discovery flickered to life, displaying an avalanche of information, detailed analyses of their ship's vulnerabilities, weapon systems, crew composition, and even biological assessments of the various species on board. How? Kyle gurgled in horror. Our shields were fully operational. Our counter-intrusion systems are state-of-the-art. Sir, Emily's voice trembled as she studied her console. These scans were taken before we even detected their ship. They've been gathering intelligence on us since we entered this sector. Impossible. Jason slammed his appendages against the chair. No scanning technology could... It's not technological, Sarah interrupted, her eyes wide in shock as she examined the data streams. These readings, quantum entanglement signatures, they weren't actively scanning us at all. Her voice was tinged with disbelief. They've seeded this entire region with quantum-entangled particles. They can observe without scanning, without any detectable energy signature. The bridge went still as the horrifying realization sunk in. They hadn't stumbled upon a primitive species exploring space for the first time. They had blindly walked into the domain of an advanced civilization that had been watching them, studying them, and preparing for this moment long before the inevitable discovery ever left port. "I don't understand," Kyle finally broke the silence, his form trembling. "If they're so advanced, why does their ship look so primitive?" "Camouflage," Jason whispered, his mind snapping into focus. "They wanted to be underestimated. They wanted to be scanned. This entire encounter was a trap." Captain Sophia Martin smiled, a predator's grin that made Jason's stomach tighten. The hunt was over. "Your assessment is correct, Commander Thornton," Lieutenant Commander Jack Torres said, his voice steady. "The question now is, what will you do with this information?" Before Jason could respond, the alarm klaxons blared, cutting him off. Ensign Kyle Johnson's gelatinous form rippled with frantic color changes as he worked his console. "Multiple projectiles launched from the human vessel," he screamed. "Impact in 12 seconds. "Evasive maneuvers," Jason ordered, the panic creeping into his voice. "Full power to shields." Lieutenant Emily Carter's 4 hands flew across the navigation controls, desperately trying to avoid the incoming projectiles. "Evasion pattern Delta 9, she called out, but the inevitable discovery lurched violently as its engines fought to change course. The ship's inertial dampeners strained to compensate, throwing crew members off balance. "Status of the incoming weapons?" Jason demanded, gripping his chair tightly with all 7 appendages. "They're not—" Sarah hesitated, confusion in her voice. "They're not explosives. I'm detecting complex electronics, power sources, and propulsion systems." 6 seconds to impact," Kyle announced, his voice shaking. On the main viewer, Captain Sophia Martin remained eerily calm, observing them with the detached focus of a scientist watching an experiment unfold. "I wouldn't waste energy on evasive maneuvers, Commander," she said, her voice like ice. "They're programmed to follow." As if on cue, the projectiles altered their trajectory, locking onto the inevitable discovery despite the ship's desperate attempts to evade. "Brace for impact," Jason shouted. The expected explosion never came. Instead, the crew watched in stunned silence as the projectiles latched onto the hull at various strategic points. "What are they?" Jason demanded, turning back to the viewer. Captain Sophia Martin spoke plainly. "Education modules." She sounded almost casual. "The devices activated simultaneously, drilling into your ship's hull with remarkable efficiency. Breach alarms screamed, and automated systems scrambled to seal off compromised sections." "They're deploying something," Sarah reported, her voice filled with disbelief. "Nanoscale machines, billions of them. They're infiltrating our systems through physical connections, not wireless." "Shut down all computer systems," Jason ordered, but the panic in his voice betrayed his resolve. "Emergency protocols. Too late," Emily responded, her voice hollow. "They're already in our systems. Everything is being rewritten." The screens around them flickered to life, each displaying the same chilling message in perfect Confederation standard language. "Stand down. Resistance will result in escalation." Kyle's gelatinous form had turned a sickly shade of gray. "I'm detecting multiple new energy signatures inside the ship. Oh no!" Before Jason could react, the bridge doors hissed open, and 3 human figures stood framed in the doorway. Their armor shimmered faintly as they moved, indicating some sort of advanced camouflage technology. Their helmets concealed their faces behind mirrored visors, and each carried strange weapons the Vorath had never seen before. "How did they get aboard?" Jason whispered, frozen in his command chair. "Quantum entanglement teleportation," one of the humans responded, his voice distorted slightly through the helmet's speaker. "The education modules created the necessary quantum field parameters." The leader of the group stepped forward. "Lieutenant Commander Jack Torres, UNC Special Operations. This vessel is now under United Nations Security Council control. Your cooperation will determine whether this situation remains a diplomatic matter or escalates into a military confrontation." The main viewer shifted again to reveal Captain Sophia Martin. "Commander Thornton," she stated calmly, "your vessel is free to depart. A data packet has been uploaded to your navigation system, containing coordinates for the edge of United Nations Space Command territory. I strongly advise you follow that route exactly." Jason could only nod, his once unshakable confidence now shattered. Sophia added, her tone softening slightly, "The Confederation appears to be a stable and organized political entity. That's rare and valuable in this galaxy. We would prefer an alliance to conflict." You have a peculiar way of showing it, Jason responded, finding his voice, though it was laced with bitterness. Sophia nodded, acknowledging the remark. First impressions matter, Commander. You came to study what you believed to be prey, and instead discovered you were facing a potential predator. Remember that feeling when you report back to your superiors. As the inevitable discovery limped away from the encounter, its crew shell-shocked and its systems compromised, Lieutenant Emily Carter quietly approached Jason at the command chair. "Orders, sir?" she asked softly. Jason stared at the retreating UNC Vera cruise on the viewer. Its deceptively primitive appearance now felt like the ultimate mockery of their arrogance. "Set course for Confederation headquarters," he replied, his voice hollow. "Maximum speed. We need to warn them about the humans, about our utter failure to comprehend what we were truly facing." Jason's cranial ridges had darkened to a dull, defeated gray. "And pray to whatever cosmic forces you believe in that the Confederation takes this warning seriously." 3 weeks later, Galactic Confederation Headquarters, High Council Emergency Session. The Grand Chamber fell silent as Commander Jason Thornton finished recounting his encounter with the humans. His testimony, alongside the data recovered from the inevitable discovery, had prompted the first full emergency session of the High Council in over 50 cycles. High Chancellor Gregory Williams, the ancient Elvenar who had ruled the Confederation for 2 centuries, leaned forward in his gravity throne. "You expect us to believe that a previously unknown species not only repelled your scans but managed to completely overpower a Confederation vessel using technology we cannot comprehend." "I expect you to believe the evidence before you," Jason replied, his usual reverence for authority eroded by the weight of his experience. "The sensor logs don't lie, the hull breaches don't lie, the quantum entanglement signatures don't lie." Admiral David Moore slammed his massive fist on the council table. "This is preposterous. No species could hide 17 prior first contacts from us. Our intelligence network spans the known galaxy." "Perhaps," a new voice interjected, "the known galaxy is smaller than you think." All eyes turned to Science Minister Lyra Vare, who had been tirelessly analyzing the data from the inevitable discovery. The diminutive Draknar appeared even more frail than usual, her luminous skin dimmed by exhaustion. "Explain," demanded Chancellor Gregory Williams. Lyra activated the chamber's holographic display, and a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy appeared, with Confederation territory clearly marked in blue. "We've always considered our explored space substantial," she began, gesturing to the blue section. "Approximately 12% of the galaxy, centered around the spiral arms, where habitable worlds are most common." She tapped her control pad, and new regions began to glow red, small at first, but expanding, interconnecting until nearly 30% of the galaxy was highlighted. "This," she said quietly, "is the territory where we've detected quantum entanglement patterns matching those from Commander Thornton's encounter. Based on signal degradation analysis, these particles have been in place for at least 300 years. The council erupted in stunned exclamations. Chancellor Gregory Williams raised his withered hand for silence. "Are you suggesting these humans have been observing nearly a third of the galaxy for centuries without detection?" "That is precisely what the evidence suggests," Lyra confirmed. "But there's more." She zoomed in on a particular sector. "This region contains the homeworlds of the Varnak, who mysteriously ceased all interstellar travel 2 centuries ago. We assumed a natural catastrophe had befallen them." She highlighted another sector. "And here, the Kilnar Empire, whose expansion abruptly halted 70 cycles ago." She pointed to yet another sector, the Zalthar hegemony, whose aggressive colonization efforts simply stopped. Understanding swept through the chamber like a chilling wave. "All these civilizations," Admiral David Moore whispered, his voice filled with disbelief. "They encountered the humans before us." "Yes," Lyra nodded gravely. "And based on the patterns of their sudden behavioral changes, I believe they all made the same mistake." Her luminous eyes flickered with fear as she glanced around the room. "They challenged humanity." Chancellor Gregory Williams slumped back in his gravity throne, his ancient form suddenly looking frail. "So we are surrounded," he murmured, "at the mercy of a species that could have destroyed us at any time, but chose to remain hidden watching." "Not entirely hidden," Jason corrected, finding his voice again. "Remember what their captain said. 12 species allied with them, 5 neutralized." The chamber fell silent again as the full weight of the realization sank in. The Confederation, proud and ancient, was not the dominant power they had assumed. They were merely tolerated by an empire of shadows, a species that had been watching, waiting, and judging them for centuries. And they had just failed their first test. "What do we do now?" someone finally asked. Chancellor Gregory Williams straightened in his throne, suddenly looking every bit of his 400 years. "We send an ambassador immediately," he declared, his voice firm, "and we pray that humanity is as open to diplomacy as they claim to be."